How are you going to treat people? Are they tools or are they people? What do you want for people? How do you want them to grow? That aspect of it hasn't changed. If you're making that what you're about, I think that's why certain coaches are successful.
I've had a weird, large amount of conversations the last month or two with coaches about like administration. Do they want to stay in coaching? Do they want to go administration? All that kind of stuff. So dive in a little more of your transition from coaching to administration. And then as part of that response, I want you to share like what's been different in leading from the AD chair as opposed to leading as a coach.
All right. So here's what I started to notice in my life from a coaching perspective. As I was involved in administration, whether that was, leading a committee or being a department coordinator, a program coordinator for a major or whatever it may be throughout my academic career and coaching career, I really found that, hey, you've got these giftings that allow you to solve problems for other people or help other people achieve their goals, and you really don't care who gets the credit. So I'm very satisfied with helping Rob get somewhere and achieve a goal that he wants to for the major that you're putting in or for the baseball team that you're coaching, and I really don't care. So when I looked at the skills that I had, and as those began to develop with the different situations that I had, service became a big part of that, and the ability to serve others, the desire to serve others, the desire to see others succeed, coupled with my skill set, this was, okay, this is the next step, right? Mm-hmm. And, there's a story that goes way back. Like, I've always wanted to be involved in athletics. And I thought for many years that was, coaching. I sometimes wonder now, what was I doing coaching all those years? And should I have but I didn't know, right?
Yeah. You didn't have that same feel about my career too.
Yeah, but you don't know, right? So then you realize that, wait a minute, I've got a skill set that's valuable to the institution that I serve. I got a skill set that's valuable. In my case, I hope it's valuable, the voice and the what I bring to the table at the national level. I'm satisfied this way. The one thing that I think you do miss in the transition is when you transition, everybody talks about the feeling in the room of being with a bunch of other coaches, right? Mm-hmm. Or the interaction time with athletes. And that's really there, because once you become an administrator, the relationship changes between peers. So, I'm coaching with you one day and you're the volleyball coach, and the next day I'm the AD and you're the volleyball coach, and our relationship has changed. I've known various ways that people handle this, but very respected Hall of Fame AD told me one time, he said, there's certain lines that I have to draw with my coaches in terms of relationship, because at some point I still have to evaluate you. And if I got to be able to have the ability to do the right thing for the institution and for the program. And, his point was, if I get too close, that's tough.
Yeah.
And then you throw the Christian aspect into that, right, Rob? And it's like, okay, but so where is that line? Because I really want to love people, mm-hmm. and I want to love them well. And loving them well is not just being nice. Sometimes it's being kind and telling them, I'm going to be kind enough to tell you that you need to get better in this area, and not being nice enough just to let them continue to falter in that area. But yeah, to answer your question, I just think that I was developed with, given, gifted a set of skills that allow me to, I think, be good at what I do. And I continue to attempt to develop those skills. I think the Holy Spirit in us continues to develop those skills as well, if we let him. But I do miss the relationships. It's very rewarding. I don't know how you found it, but it's extremely rewarding.
I'd agree with a lot of what you said. Curious, from a leadership standpoint, in what ways has leading as a coach and leading as an AD been the same? You talked about a lot of the differences. Were there any things that were like, yeah, I can do this, I developed this skill set as a coach?
Well, I think, coaching football, there is kind of that, like I got to hire people and trust them to do their job. So I grew up in small programs and I coached in small programs where, man, I did everything, right? I mean, you were washing the laundry on Sunday, you were painting the field, you were doing all these different things. So growing up, God gave me this very unique background that I spent summers with my sister and brother-in-law on a dairy farm. I spent the winters and with my mom and dad, and I was in a multi-generational setting. And so all of these different types of things that I think really enhance my ability to do the job now
Hmm.
were there. Like you look at that and you go, oh golly, that experience prepared me for this. Or having to do that developed within me the ability to look at this, and I do think that I'm kind of more of a big picture individual than some people. I think
Hmm.
in this position you have to be a big picture individual. But even as a football coach, I could recognize that that's probably not what's best for the institution,
Yeah.
you know. Which, no offense to coaches, but I haven't met a lot of coaches who are like that.
No, and it comes from a
you
good
know,
place. They're good
that-
people, but it's hard to get outside your own little.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's interesting where you asked me my experience, and I think coaching really helped me as an AD just from a practical level of I hope I never get too far out. I forget it of the things that were hard and stunk as a coach. So if you haven't coached, you may not understand that. And being able to empathize on the hard, I think is important. The thing that surprised me the most is there's a lot of difficulty in leading in anything. It's a challenging thing, but I think adults are harder to lead because 18 to 22-year-old kids, by and large, they're going to do what you say. From a just from a leadership, hey, we're going to do this. Adults, you better give them a reason to follow you and find a way to make your environment sticky enough that they believe in it. And I found that was the learning curve for me as an AD is how do I do that with adults where I felt like I could do with kids, but it's very different. So,
Yeah, especially when you get the pushback, right? Like,
yeah.
well, why is that good for everybody?
Mhm.
Why would that be a positive?
Yeah.
And I think, probably another thing that you have to develop, especially in our day and age, is the way that you talk about your various sports and the way that, you are now in charge. I don't know how many sports Friends has, but
24.
yeah. So when you're talking about them, it has to be the kind of thing where everything's valued, right?
Hmm.
Everything is equal, everything's valued. The esports kid isn't more or less important than the football kid.
Hmm.
And the coaches are the same. Like, hey, we are all, you can't look at it in terms of who's generating more revenue. You have to be able to say, look, I value all of you and make them feel valued. Yes, they stick around for institutional mission. I work in a great place where people are sold out to the institutional mission, and it's strong enough that people stay, right? But if I mess up that process where I'm getting in the way of how they feel about the mission, then they're leaving anyway, right?
Hmm.
And they're going to go somewhere else. And they go, man, I loved working at Nelson University, but gosh, I just couldn't get past the AD, you know? And and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to use the word this is politics from the AD chair, but there's a realness to it that you have to have.
Hmm.
Whoever goes knock knock, hey, you got a minute on your door and you don't have a minute, like, do I need to take a minute here or can I tell them, you know what, I don't.
Yeah.
If you're consistently doing that to one coach and not the rest of the coaches, they know that.
Yeah. That's well said. And I
Anyway,
think you're talking about like the fairness piece. I figured this out. I couldn't put words to it early on, but I think we're always making our case whether we know it or not. Like in a practical example, I think of like at Friends, we have one turf field. So it's shared by both soccer teams and football. So practice time is
Mhm.
incredibly important. And football gets the prime time, in the mid to late afternoon. And there was a complaint once about that. And I get it. I'd complain too if I wasn't getting it. But we have twice the number of football players than both soccer teams combined. That is a harder schedule to coordinate. That is a dead time on campus. It's better for the whole. They get that. And trying to create that understanding that it's not just football getting whatever they want. And I think that's transferable to about any conversation of how do you build a perspective for the greater good. And when there's values conflict, you point people back to that of how are we doing this together? And
Yeah.
it is political. I don't think that's the wrong word for it. So
I was just going to say that, yeah, I just thought about five other things like that, right? If you have various scholarship levels, if you have, whatever it may be, roster sizes that dictate how and when you can do some things and
yeah.
who gets what. Yeah.
I don't know if defend's the right word, but provide giving space for frustration while also being able to give rationale as to why and being well thought out enough that you're not perceived as flying by the seat of your pants. So, all right, part 3. So one of the things we're focused on with the Impactful Coaching Project is how do you lead this generation of kid? So Generation Z, born around 2000, they're starting to be our coaches as well. And here's our premise is no doubt my parents' generation said my generation didn't get it. And I know my grandparents probably said that about my parents' generation, so on and so forth. But I think it's accelerated due to social media, COVID, a lot of different things of the generational differences. So I'm curious how you think this current generation of student athlete has changed and how they've stayed the same.
Wow. I don't know at the core, and I'm going to answer both questions with this. Like, I don't know at the core that people have changed. People are still looking for love. They're still looking for acceptance. They're still looking for direction. They gravitate towards people who can give them that. So, screen time has changed. Technology has changed. The core basic human being needs are still the core basic human being needs. And how we coach might be different within that.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through these phases of, as a player, we're going down the road in a charter bus and we're all talking to each other, right? We actually, somewhere in the world is a bootleg tape that probably should never show up, cassette tape of, us in a bus. Um,
Half the
and
people
then,
just don't know what a cassette tape is. You just
yeah,
showed your age.
yes, yeah. Well, then, okay, then of all things, another thing that they won't know is VHS showed up on the bus, right?
Yeah.
So now we are all having this communal experience watching, every Rocky that's ever been put out on the bus trip, right? And then these devices come in where you can watch it on your phone. And so that communal experience goes out. Now we don't even worry if there's a DVD on the bus. Who cares? Because they're all going to be watching it. They can watch their own movie, right? So it's back to a singular experience, right? But the core human need is still there, right?
Mhm.
So coaches, how are you going to treat people? Are they tools or are they people? What do you want for people? How do you want them to grow? That aspect of it hasn't changed. If you're making that what you're about, I think that's why certain coaches are successful, because it doesn't matter if it's a 1980s kid or if it's a 2020s kid. Like, I still want love. I still want acceptance. I still want direction. I still want boundaries. All of those things are still necessary. It looks different. It certainly does. And they're starting at maybe a different point than, like, I think when I went to play college ball, probably 90% of the team was at a shared culture, right? I don't know that happens at this point. When we all come together as a team, that ain't the case. Like, there's so many different backgrounds, I think, in that 0 to 18 age,
Yep.
that are influencing what's going on and what somebody brings into an 18 to 22-year-old. Now I'm in this culture. How do I act? What do I do? Gosh, I've never had that happen before. No man has ever told me that he loves me. No coach has ever been concerned about anything other than, how could I swing a bat? I don't look at it as that much different than when I started coaching in 1988. It's still, can I relate to you as a person? Can I love you? And are you just a tool to me, or are you a human being? Because if you're just a tool, then I'm going to use you and discard you, because that's what we do with tools. We don't do that with human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And I think answering both your questions in one answer, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
So you said something in the middle there. I'm going to put you on the spot where you said it looks different now. Give an example of like what looks different. So fundamental needs are the same. We're human beings. Agreed.
Yeah.
What looks different, you think?
Go back to the DVD, everybody's in a communal experience, and now everybody's in a singular experience where they're all watching their own movie as you're coming back from a game or something like that. So just take that example. Okay, you got young kids in your house and you probably say, hey, I'm hanging out with my friends. Well, there's nobody in the bedroom with you. Well, yeah, but I'm hanging out with my friends virtually, right? So that's their experience, right? That's not my experience, that's their experience.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, that's what I mean by a different experience. Is like, okay, I have to bring you back to some communal thing here, because I think most of your life is lived singly. Not my experience growing up, but your experience growing up in this generation is. So my biggest task is, how do I get you outside yourself? How
Mm-hmm.
do I get you to be communal thinking? This doesn't just impact you, it impacts everybody. That's kind of what I mean by that different.
No, that makes sense. That actually was some research we did last year on motivation. I think what you're hitting on is the primary thing on how coaches. I don't think coaches are the primary motivator in terms of I said do this. I'm here to inspire you. Let's go. I think our kids told us at Friends through research we did, a majority are motivated by relationships, and relationships with teammates was number one. So how does a coach cultivate an environment where you become outward looking and caring about others as fast as possible? And I think
Yep,
that's where you maximize abilities and community to really build a powerful experience for kids.
that's awesome. Yeah, I agree. That's one of the things I appreciate about chapel here at our institution. It's a communal experience
Mm-hmm.
that challenges you to grow yourself, but also grow in community.
What I don't like, but I've come around on, is we put a lot of focus on social media now because that's one of the places communities are built, you know,
Yeah.
and our kids are going to be interacting on there. So let's get there and try to build messaging and fun stuff that as healthy as you can be while being on social media. All right, I've kept you long enough. We always wrap up with a rapid fire round. So you have no longer than 15 seconds to answer any of these questions.
Oh gosh.
Ready? Number one, what book have you given most as a gift and why?
For God's sake, lead. I think was the name of it. What's that guy's name? Gone. Anyway,
Oh, Todd Gongwer. Yeah.
Todd Gonwer. Yeah, that's yeah. Because I think it just people read that and go, oh, this is what I'm about.
Yep. Totally agree. How was a failure set you up for later success?
I was not a very good disciplinarian when I first started, because I was very young, close to their age, and now I had to find. And you know my personality, Rob. So the
Mhm.
biggest thing was I had to find, how do I do this within my personality?
Yep.
I'm not a yeller, screamer, not So, but how do I get your will to bend to mine within my personality?
What is your favorite podcast?
This one right now, but
I know you're a weekly listener. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. No, man, I listen to a ton of podcasts. Probably one that I really like, gives us kind of a different Travis Wyckoff, Coaching DNA. I
Hmm.
don't know if you ever heard of Travis. Probably not a widely known, but it's pretty good. And then I listen to a lot of Pushkin stuff from Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, I just started his new book, The Tipping Point Revisited. Yeah. So, all right. Remember, you got to be less than 15 seconds. So that was my good friend Jesse Godding, who I feel like I learn a ton from every time we talk. So, Jesse, thanks for joining us, and looking forward to more conversation. Thank you for listening to another episode of Beyond Coaching. Beyond Coaching is a podcast developed and produced by the Impactful Coaching Project with the support of Friends University. The Impactful Coaching Project seeks to develop coaches that coach the whole person and is the thought leader in coaching the 21st century athlete. The Impactful Coaching Project produces training, information, and research to help coaches improve. To see more information, go to impactfulcoachingproject.substack.com. Thank you.